My name is John Kennedy, and I'm running for the United States Senate. And the reason is pretty simple. I want my country back. I'm afraid we're losing it. My mom and dad were very conservative people. My dad was a small businessman. He owned a little lumber yard. My mom was a retired school teacher. My mom and dad taught me conservative values. Things like God, church, family, discipline, hard work, education. They taught me to always do the best I can. And I worry that we're losing a lot of those values in America today. Now, values are important. Values determine our choices, and our choices determine our future. And in my opinion, our future is being put at risk by the choices and the values being made by the limp, self-perpetuating political elite in Washington, D.C. Here's what I see in America and Louisiana today. I look around and I see too many people, undeserving people at the top getting bailouts. And I see too many undeserving people at the bottom getting handouts. And I see people in the middle getting the bill. And they can't pay it anymore. You know why? Because the health insurance has gone up thanks to Obamacare. Their tuition has gone up thanks to the state of Louisiana. Their taxes have gone up, but I'll tell you what hadn't gone up, their income. The fact of the matter is that median household income in America today is actually $4,000 less than it was in 2002. Now, the sad truth is that our children's generation is the first generation in America that is at risk of being less well off than their parents, because we're losing the American dream. And we're losing the American dream because it's harder than ever to get ahead and because it's easier than ever to do nothing. And that's why the American people feel so stuck. Hope and change has turned into decline and uncertainty. Now, if I haven't convinced you, I just want you to think a second about what the political elite in Washington, D.C. has given us in the last 8 years. Let's see. We had the Great Recession of 2008. We have had the most feeble recovery from a recession in economic history. We have had a bipartisan effort on both sides of the aisle, Democrat and Republican, to refuse to stop illegal immigration. America's lost 2 wars. We've seen the stunning rise of China, which is eating our lunch and stealing our jobs. We've been rinky-dooed by Iran. Our country's been embarrassed by Putin. We've been attacked by terrorists at home, and the world is on fire with ISIS. I believe my country and my state deserve better. We may be losing America, it may be slipping away, but we can get it back. We've just got to remind ourselves who we are. Now, in just a few minutes here, I want to tell you what I want from my country and my state. And these are the things that I'm going to fight hard for every day in the United States Senate. I want a country whose leaders respect taxpayer dollars. I am sick of the deficits, and I'm sick of the spending, and I'm sick of the waste, and I'm sick of the debt. You know, we hear all the time that we've got a $19 trillion national debt, and that's true. But do you really know what that means? That means that the United States Congress has spent $19 trillion more than they took in, and they fill the hole by borrowing money. And you know who's got to pay that money back? You do. I do. And our children and our grandchildren. Our children ought to be inheriting from us opportunity, not debt. I also want a country and a state where every person can get a decent job. And that's particularly important in Louisiana, if for no other reason but to keep our kids home. If we keep losing bright young women and bright young men to Denver and Dallas and Atlanta, the average age in Louisiana is going to be deceased. Now, you can't be for jobs if you're against business. To create jobs, businesses need low taxes, they need sensible regulations, they need a good infrastructure, and they need a skilled workforce. And that's what I'm going to work hard for every day in the United States Senate. Let me say something about education. I want a country and a state where no parents have to send their child to a failing school. I support charter schools. I support competition. I support higher standards, as long as those standards are developed in Louisiana, not Washington, D.C. And I'll tell you what else I support. I support finding out which of our teachers can teach and paying them. And I support finding out which of our teachers can't teach and either teaching them how or telling them to find a new line of work. Healthcare. Obamacare is not working for America. When the United States Congress passed Obamacare, they told us that our lives would be better. They told us that health insurance would be more affordable and more accessible. It's been neither. Our lives are worse. I want an America and a state where a mother can take her sick child to a family doctor instead of to an emergency room because she has affordable health insurance of her own choosing from the private sector. I also want a country that is strong. If we're strong, we'll be free. I want a country that values peace but is not afraid to fight back. America is the strongest country in the history of the world. We need to start acting like it. That's how we will win the war against terrorism. Here's what ought to be the new rule, and here's the rule I'll support. If you join ISIS, if you join Al-Qaeda, if you join Lebanon-based Hezbollah, you sign your death warrant. If you hit us, we hit you back twice as hard. I also want a country and a state, an America and a Louisiana that understands, and I want to choose my words carefully here, that understands that free market capitalism has done more to lift people out of poverty than all the government programs put together. Now, the American people are the most compassionate people in the world, and I'm very proud of that. If you're hungry, we feed you. If you're homeless, we house you. If you're too poor to be sick, we will pay for your doctor. But folks, these social programs were meant to be a bridge, not a parking lot. We have got to stop seeing our fellow Americans, so many of our fellow Americans, as victims, and start seeing them as potential workers and help them get a job so they'll know the dignity of work and they'll know the dignity of being able to support their family. Finally, I want a Louisiana and an America that values life. And it shouldn't matter whether that life is 82 years old or 82 seconds old. Now, most Louisianians know me, and they know what I stand for. I don't believe in spending more money than you take in. I've balanced 16 department budgets. I've earned $3.4 billion by wisely investing taxpayer money. That's $3.4 billion less that our taxpayers had to pay in taxes. I've returned about $315 million to my fellow citizens in unclaimed property. That's lost money, for those of you who don't know. I have declined to join the state retirement system. I have fought every day against corruption and cronyism. And when I've had to, I've stood up to politicians of both parties who are more powerful than I am. Now, I try not to be rude, but I do speak my mind. As a result, some of my colleagues call me, among other things, a misfit, a rebel, a square peg in a round hole, because I'm not part of the club. And I won't be part of the club in Washington. My job is to protect taxpayers, not seek the approval of my political peers. I hope you'll give me the chance to do the same thing in Washington, D.C. I believe our country can be better than our present or our past. I believe we shouldn't fear our future. We ought to grab for it. We ought to grab for our future. We won't win every fight, but by God, we ought to refuse to be beaten. Please send me to Washington to fight for you. I won't let you down. Don't do it for me. Do it for us. Do it for our values. Do it for the American dream. Thank you again for having me. May God grace and bless all of us and make His face to shine upon us and Louisiana and the United States of America. Thanks.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's great to be with you. And let me start by thanking you for all the tremendous work you do day in and day out on behalf of our great citizens of Louisiana. I've worked with many of you side by side, especially when we went through the hurricane relief. It was a difficult task. We got the job done. So I just want to say thank you. You know, I flew back in from Washington on Thursday night, got into the house about 10 o'clock. My wife picked me up at the airport. I put my bag down, and the first thing she told me was, "Remember what tomorrow is?" I said, "Yeah, you've trained me well. It's trash morning." So I took out the trash, and I'm thankful every single day that my wife keeps me grounded, because I fly back and forth each week, come home, I want to be home. Lafayette is my home. I grew up in Lafayette. I was very fortunate, the oldest of 10 children, 2 loving parents who gave us tremendous opportunity. And you can imagine growing up in a family with 10 children, how chaotic it can be at times. Well, the one thing I did learn in that environment was that we had to fight hard, fight fairly, and settle our differences at the end of the day. But I can tell you, that's not the case in Washington. It doesn't even come close. You wouldn't believe the absurdity of what happens there day in and day out. My parents also enabled me to go on and become get a good education and to achieve my dream of being a cardiovascular surgeon. And that gave me the opportunity to help people, to serve my community, things that are really important that each of us need to do, each of you do day in and day out. But the one thing I did learn too as a cardiovascular surgeon was I learned how to solve problems quickly and decisively. Don't beat around the bush. You got to get the job done. And that commitment I had for my patients and their families, our community, helped create the sense of civic duty that motivates me today as I serve in the United States Congress. Now let me mention something a little bit about Washington right now. You guys are frustrated and you're angry, and rightfully so. And so am I. I can tell you I'm furious at the direction our country is heading. Under President Obama's liberal policies, under a dysfunctional Congress, the lack of inaction on key issues that are vital, even at times when we can actually find agreement in the room, things bog down. Let me be frank. As bad as you think it is, it's worse. I'm dealing with it every single day. Let me highlight a few things that are going on. Right now, we have a president, and it's not just this president, who abuses executive orders, gets what he wants oftentimes, tramples on the Constitution, and ignores the balance of power with Congress. This is unacceptable, and it's going to have to stop. And we are working, we've had some success in stopping these things. We have an IRS that's targeting individuals in this country for their political or religious beliefs. That is the agency that affects each and every one of us more than any other agency, with the power to destroy. It's unacceptable. I launched the investigation against the IRS, and under my watch, chairing the Oversight Committee, we got 3 IRS commissioners fired, and the 4th one's in trouble. And we're going to continue this work. We're not going to stop. This is completely absurd, and it's going to stop. We're all feeling the effects of Obamacare. I know what the effects of Obamacare are as a medical doctor. I've seen it. Higher cost, higher premiums, higher out-of-pocket costs for every one of us. Bankruptcies because you can't afford your health care bills. This is absolutely absurd. It's not what the American people expected from health care, and it's got to change. There's been no increase of quality or access to care. And as a physician with 30 years' experience, I just can't stomach this. We've got to change it. Obamacare is fundamentally flawed as a body of law. It has let us down, and the administration and the folks working there are too arrogant to understand that. They don't understand that this is hurting American families. I talked to small businesses across our state. 40% increase in premiums over and above last year, and getting less for it. We're going to stop this. I can tell you as a physician and a business owner, I saw those challenges every single day as I cared for my patients, and the bureaucracy even then that was interfering with that opportunity to take care of patients in their time of need. I had to provide medical coverage for my employees and for my family. It was difficult then. It's even more difficult today. It's nearly impossible. And after the years of experience in healthcare, let me tell you what we really need to do there. We've got to restore the basic building block of solid, good healthcare. And that's the doctor-patient relationship. The relationship that you have with your doctor, the ability to get that relationship built on trust. It's missing. Bureaucrats don't get it. And healthcare will get worse in this country until we restore that basic fundamental building block. I fought against Obamacare from day one. And in fact, the largest single defeat, one of the only defeats, and clearly the largest defeat to that whole health care law was legislation I authored and got passed. It eliminated an $86 billion new automatic spending program where there was going to be double counting of the money coming in. Collect money for one thing and spend it on another. I stopped it. It's gone. It's done. And we're going to continue to fight this until we get a system that puts patients first. That's what you want. That's what we all want. And sadly, I can tell you nothing's more broken than the VA and the treatment of our veterans. And the people running the VA administration, the people running this bureaucracy, they don't get it. They're the last ones to understand it. I personally fought hard. I fought against the president. I fought against my own leadership in the House. I fought against an incompetent bureaucracy to bring 2 new veterans clinics to South Louisiana and 23 other clinics around this country. And I'm not going to stop until we get every veteran seeing the highest quality care. At the very least, they deserve that after putting on the uniform and serving this great country. Now, we're facing a presidential election, and you all are watching that as we are. And one of the most important things I believe that we need to do to turn this country around is to take the keys away from liberal Democrats and hand those keys over to a conservative leader who respects our Constitution and our system of government and understands what it's going to take to restore America back to prosperity. And while I know and I can guarantee you that on January 20th, 2017, President Obama will see his last day in office, I don't want to wake up to a Hillary Clinton presidency on the next day. After 8 years of failed liberal policies in this country, and you've seen the effect of this, I don't have to relitigate or discuss it further, voters are angry. Voters are frustrated. And we cannot afford another 4 years of these kinds of policies. Now, think back. This country has faced similar challenges. I think you all remember the Carter administration, 1970s. Think about this. I remember Jimmy Carter in the dead of winter putting on a little cardigan sweater, The lighting was darker in the White House, and he said, you know, turn the heat down. He said, we've got to do things differently. This is a different America. He was giving us a dimmer view of America. And this is a president who could not get our hostages who were held by Iran home. This was a president whose weakness at that time allowed the Soviet Union to invade Afghanistan and triggered a number of things that have happened that we're still feeling the effects today from those events. And then Ronald Reagan came along, and he offered a positive message of hope and prosperity. And he reminded us something I think we all feel in our hearts. He reminded us that we're an exceptional nation. I believe that. I believe we're an exceptional nation. It's up to us at every single level of government, as every citizen in this country, to ensure that we remain a great nation, an exceptional nation. That's our generational challenge. It's not a given. It's something we have to do. That baton is passed to us. We have to run with the baton. So America is going to need leaders who can help us achieve the very highest aspirations we have as a nation. And I can tell you, as a candidate for the United States Senate, I'm committing every waking hour of my life to the service of this country and to Louisiana. I want to restore American respect. I want to restore American prosperity and opportunity, because far too many people are feeling hopeless today. We got a broad swath of our population in this country who have not seen an increase in their wages, or they have lost their jobs. They're suffering. The American people are suffering, and it's time for leadership. Now, as a doctor, I had the great privilege of being a highly trained cardiothoracic surgeon. I didn't just have to diagnose problems. I had to go fix problems, and oftentimes with a sense of urgency. And to put it in clear terms for you, what did all this mean? What was my day like at that point in time? After I'd finished operating all day long, taking care of patients, I'd go see a patient in a room with their family, surrounded by their loved ones, somebody lying on a bed, scared. The doctor had told them they need heart surgery. And I walk into that room, and I had to quickly gain the trust of that family and that patient, that I was the person who was going to open their chest, stop their heart, hold that heart, a human heart, in my hands, and fix it. And I had to get them through that and get them out of the hospital and back to their loved ones, back to work, and back to a productive life. That's what I did day in and day out. Families depended on me to get it done, to make decisions, and perform and do the job. But I tell you what, it didn't teach me patience. It did prepare me for public service, but I'm impatient. And I can tell you, trust me, when I tell you things are broken in Washington, and I've seen it get worse, Congress can't even get a post office named in a matter of hours. I mean, it's crazy. It's ridiculous. The American people deserve better. We need leaders who won't stop until it's better. Now, yes, you're angry. You're frustrated as I am, and I'm showing mine because I deal with this. But it's time to get serious. It's time to get deadly serious about fixing these problems. You're hearing from a lot of candidates, a lot of politicians who are going to talk about these issues. But the country needs leaders who can fix these problems and not just scream about them. Now, we are facing a very important U.S. Senate race. I think the Senate race is going to be the most important in this state's history in quite a long time. And there are going to be three basic issues that we're going to deal with: strengthening our national security, safeguarding our American values, and growing our economy to create opportunity. And the key question for each and every one of you and the voters across our great state is going to be very simple. Who do you trust? Who do you really trust to address these problems? Let me share a few ideas I have for the future. On national security, first and foremost, we have to protect the American people, American families, and American interests, no matter where those interests are. The president's weak and listless leadership has created a world where our friends, like Israel, they don't trust us anymore. And our enemies, they don't fear us. That's why Putin's running all over the map, whether it's in Ukraine or in Syria, Crimea. That's why the Chinese are building islands and arming these islands with missiles and jets. This is a very dangerous world. Our country's been attacked by Al-Qaeda. ISIS is threatening. We've unraveled a number of plots. To reverse these trends and policies, we need the strongest, most capable military that we can put together and an intelligence community to back it. And I want to make sure that both of these entities, our military, the men and women we put in the field, have the very best equipment, our intelligence community doesn't fail us, and that we're providing the necessary funding to make all this happen. That's been my voting record, and I will continue to stand on these issues. It means developing an effective diplomatic strategy to build coalitions to tackle these rogue regimes and to defeat terrorism, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and others. But it's not good enough just simply to do all of those things. We also have to create an American-led environment around the world that leads to peace and prosperity. I am sick and tired of American diplomats giving away American interest rather than fighting for our American interest. And we got to put a stop to that. It also means, and this is something that's been missing, and I've been very vocal about it, it means articulating a real foreign policy strategy so that we don't careen from crisis to crisis. We actually get ahead of these issues and reassert American leadership. And none of this is going to be possible unless we get our American economy in order. And that means we got to grow the economy to give American families the opportunity to achieve the American dream, to see higher wages, to see new opportunity. These things are missing today. For nearly 8 years, this administration has hit us in the gut here in Louisiana with an assault on our oil and gas sector and other important industries. The American people have lost confidence. They've lost confidence in our economy. They've lost confidence in America. That's why we have to unshackle the burdensome regulations put forth by the EPA, IRS, Obamacare, the list goes on. Let's let our businesses create value and hire, grow this economy. We must empower businesses to compete by lowering taxes, opening new markets overseas, and promoting innovation. That's how jobs are created. Let's empower the job creators, not hurt them. We got to stop this assault on American energy production. I want American energy production to lead in a very complex new world where we're dealing with changes in the energy economy. American innovation can stabilize the price of oil, and that's what I want to see. And we have to build a diverse workforce with technical training, taking advantage of every single element. This is something afflicting our state that's a problem. We have to do better when it comes to educating our workforce of this generational hangover of the Obama administration policies. If Justice Scalia is replaced with a liberal-minded judge who continues to move the court in the wrong direction. And the Senate's going to play a key part in that because the Senate has to confirm that justice. We can't lose sight of the deeply held values that made America great, the most exceptional nation on the earth. Folks, there's a bright line. There's a bright line between right and wrong. And you need a senator who understands that difference and will stand up for what's right and say so, not be afraid to sit back, won't sit back. That includes giving every unborn child in this country the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. A chance to live. What are we as a country if we don't put the proper emphasis on life? It includes supporting the family as the most basic building block of our society. That building block has eroded over the years, and policies coming out of Washington have failed. I've authored the first rewrite of the 1996 Welfare Reform Act to strengthen both the education side and the work requirement to promote the dignity of work. We have to move this legislation through, and we will. We have to be able to give a temporary helping hand to those who are in need. That's the compassion in this country. That's the American way. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the challenges of our time. And Louisiana deserves a leader who will be very out front and outspoken in confronting these challenges. Let me tell you about why we should lead and why Louisiana is well suited to lead in this effort. We have a central location on the Gulf of Mexico with the Mississippi River and our system of ports and harbors, our waterways. No other state can boast of that. It puts us right at the epicenter, right at the center of global commerce. We can lead in this. We're not doing badly in it, but we can lead. And that creates good jobs and great opportunity. Our natural resources, oil and gas, position us to be a leader in the energy economy of the 21st century. You all know about our thriving agricultural economy. We lead in American food security. Let's ensure that that's never eroded away. Let's continue to push forward and promote American farmers. Our military communities, Barksdale right here in Shreveport, Fort Polk, are critically important to our national security. Louisiana has everything necessary to lead and to show the rest of the country how to restore this American prosperity and opportunity and to reassert American leadership. What Louisiana needs is a senator who's not going to sit back and gripe and talk about the problems and lament the fact that nothing's done. Louisiana needs a leader who can get things done, who can fix these problems. That's been my record in the Congress, and that's why I want to run for the United States Senate. That's the kind of senator I will be. So I look forward to traveling our state from Abbeville to Zwolle to earn the trust, the respect, and the votes of the people across this great state of Louisiana. I thank you for letting me be with you this morning, and I ask for your vote in November. Thank you.
I appreciate everybody up here. I appreciate what y'all do. Y'all are America. I'm honored to share the stage with such politicians and public servants as we've seen speak already before, and I think I'm about halfway through, so you've got a few more to go. And I appreciate what y'all do every single day, because when you think about what I believe in America, it's you who I think about are living that. Now, there's a couple more labels I want you to know about me. First of all, I'm a Christian. Second, I'm up here as an American, and I'm a granddad. I have 2 beautiful grandchildren. I want y'all to know that. But what do I believe? And why am I running for the United States Senate again? And what can you expect from me? Here's what I believe, folks. I believe in limited government. The limited government described in this document that I carried with me through 32 and a half years of military service, the Constitution of the United States. I believe in individual responsibility. What built this country into the greatest country in the history of the world. I believe in financial accountability, especially from the United States Congress and the executive branch of the United States. And I believe in equality of opportunity for everyone, because that is what the American dream is. Now, as I said, we're about halfway through. Let's do a little test here. Everybody stand up, stretch your legs for about 10 seconds, and then I'll ask you a question. All right, feels good, doesn't it? Yeah. All right, here's the question, folks. You can answer just by sitting down, if you agree with me. Is America weak today? If you believe America is weak today, have a seat. Well, that's why I'm running for the United States Senate, ladies and gentlemen, and I'd appreciate it if you'd consider me as the strongest qualified candidate up here for your vote. America's weaker than I've ever seen it in my lifetime, and as I was introduced, I served for 32 and a half years, and I'm the son of an Air Force enlisted man that served for 23 and a half years before me. Between the two of us, we have over 54 years of service to this great nation in cold and hot wars. And our country, unfortunately, is weaker than it's ever been. And America is no longer leading in the world. And when America doesn't lead in the world's on fire, and we see it every day in Eastern Europe. We're being challenged by Putin. In the Middle East, the Islamic State is rising into a most aggressive, oppressive inhumane, abusive regime the world has ever seen. And in China, we're being challenged too. We have got to make America's military strength the strongest in the nation again and lead in this world. And we need strong, proven leaders that haven't been coming up in a political career climate, but have real-world leadership experience out in the world like I do. Number two, our borders are not secure. Ladies and gentlemen, border security is national security. Look, I was in the Pentagon on 9/11 when I served on the Joint Chiefs of Staff advising the Chairman and the Secretary of Defense and the President in nuclear operations. I know what it's like to be at the receiving end of a terrorist target. I know what it's like for my family to be there in close proximity. And our borders are not secure. I know what the families of San Bernardino, the latest Islamic jihadist terrorist attack, feel like. And this president and this country is being allowed to ignore that threat. Illegal aliens penetrating the border of the United States of America is the most dangerous threat to your family and mine. And we've got to do something about it. And third, our economy, as has already been brought up, is just performing dismally. Over the last 8 to 14 years, we've gone down into the Great Recession, and the recovery is the worst we've seen ever. Even worse recovery than the Great Depression recovery. This country's economy is capable of increasing GDP at 4% per year, and we're performing at less than 1% per year. And it's because of the oppressive overreach and overregulation of small businesses and farmers and other folks out there in the world, the oil and gas business, that have caused this underperformance of our economy. And if we grow our economy 4% GDP per year, that helps us address the problems that we face in entitlements, the problems that we face in the budget of the defense budget. And as long as we continue to allow the federal government to expand and continue to crush small businesses and every other economic performer in the United States, we will never see a solution to that. So we've got to do those three things: strengthen America and lead in the world again, secure our borders and solve this illegal alien problem, and get this economy growing again. And you're going to hear a lot of folks this year tell you that they're going to do it. But here's the three words you need to hear: outsider, fighter, proven leader. I'm not a politician, folks. You're not going to get smooth delivery from me. What you're going to get is guidance, information, and action. And that's what we need. The United States Senate is the primary legislative policy setter for foreign policy, national security, and international relations outside of the executive branch, and we must put somebody in this seat that has real-world leadership experience in that. I have served on the Joint Chiefs, and I helped plan the war on terror after 9/11. I advised the President of the United States. I advised the Secretary of Defense. I have written 3 pages in the Nuclear Decision Handbook that's carried in the football with the President, and that means that I've designed the nuclear war plans that go with those pages. We need people that understand not only how to kill ISIS, but how to face threats like Putin and threats to Europe. And we need folks that understand what it's like to ignore the strategic need to do things that are not military related, like approving exporting of liquefied natural gas. It took us years to get that done. If we had done that years ago, there would have been an American natural gas market in Western Europe, and Putin wouldn't have been able to hold them hostage and go into the Crimea, and we wouldn't be facing the Ukraine about to fall to the Eastern Bloc again. We've got to have men and women serving in the U.S. Senate that can hold a president, and we're about to elect another president that has no military experience. No matter which one wins, none of them will. We're about to elect another president that has no military experience, and we must put people in the United States Senate that understand what it takes to hold the executive branch in check. The Congress has abdicated its responsibility and power to declare war under this Constitution that I've carried in my pocket for more years than I care to remember. And I don't want your children and my children or my service to have been expended for nothing. We've gone into countries and tried to create democracies, and we've created a fire in the world, and it's the United States' responsibility and my generation's responsibility to fix that. And Louisiana and America needs a man and woman that understands what it means when they give an order to go into combat and how it feels to see the results of that order, even if it's the accidental killing of a child. And that's what I believe and why I think I'm the best qualified person to serve Louisiana in the United States Senate, a state that I love. What can you expect from me? I'll work through action, not words, to reestablish American leadership in the world, to immediately secure our borders and stop illegal alien travel through those borders, to immediately stop and plug the holes in our immigration and refugee system so we don't allow refugees into this country that can't be vetted. We are under a military and strategic threat because of that, and we must address it. I will fight till my last breath to support your right to keep and bear arms. San Bernardino should tell you that we cannot infringe the right of the citizen to keep and bear arms to protect his or her family. I will work to defund Planned Parenthood. I will never vote on a bill that puts 1 cent of funding into Planned Parenthood. Not 1 red cent of taxpayer funding should go into Planned Parenthood. I will fight to support your religious liberty, which is under attack. Ladies and gentlemen, this country put a woman in jail because we couldn't give her a religious accommodation. That is wrong. Our country's foundation is based on the freedom of human life, religious liberty, and the ability to speak your mind without threat of force of the government. I will work to change the tax code at the federal level to eliminate the income tax, eliminate the payroll tax, and support the fair tax bill. And I'll sponsor that bill. And that's the only way you can totally eliminate the IRS, which is the most despicable government agency that the United States of America has created to hurt people like you and me. I will fight to repeal Obamacare on the first day that I'm in the Senate. I will put the bill forward, and hopefully Senator Cruz or President Trump will sign that bill immediately. Not because I want to take people's health care away, that's crazy, but because that bill is crushing small businesses and killing hospitals. Doctors can't even come together and create hospitals that are on their own anymore. It's against the law because of Obamacare. But at the same time, we always have to take care of those that are disadvantaged and less fortunate. And we can do that. This is the United States of America, and we can create systems that do take care of those that are less fortunate, but don't ruin the entire economy of the United States. Ladies and gentlemen, I own a farm. It's got a dry stream bed that flows through, that goes through half of it. And I will work to repeal any Environmental Protection Agency regulation that would put that farmer like me in the position of, if that stream gets wet, I could be susceptible to over $1 million a day in fines because they found too much fertilizer in it. That's ridiculous, and it's hurting people like you and the people you serve. We must have action, not talk. I will support and fully fund the military. But I won't just vote for every defense bill just because I'm a Republican or a conservative. That's wrong. I know where the problems are in the Department of Defense budget. Do you know that today a 3-star general can retire and walk out of the door of the Pentagon in uniform and walk in the door of Boeing as a vice president the very next day and take advantage of the colonels working in the Pentagon and the acquisition and system that are putting new systems together and, of course, letting contracts to those big businesses? Immediately, that's wrong. We need to reform the acquisition system in the Pentagon. You know we can't field in less than 3 years an existing piece of equipment on an existing aircraft to go into combat to fight the enemy as they're killing our people that would save lives in less than 3 years. I know that because I had to help do that. It took me 3 years. That's wrong. We can do better. We shouldn't just sign off on a defense bill just because we're a Republican, just like we shouldn't sign off on an entitlement bill just because we're a Democrat. We're Americans. We need to find solutions and work together. Look, I commanded the 6th largest base in the United States Air Force. I had 23,000 people, 100 units on that base. I had to learn how to work together to find consensus, to make the right decisions, to make sure the $246 million a year budget was reduced every year, because I set a goal to cut that budget every year and not reduce services. And I did that. And that installation provided $7.2 billion worth of economic impact to the state of New Mexico. $7.2 billion. We need people that have that real world experience, that understand that know what it's like to be on the stewardship end of the American tax dollar. And you know that same installation? Here's how you know you can elect somebody that knows how to secure a border. That installation was 53,000 acres, had 3 mountain ranges on it, was within 3 days walking distance of the Mexican-American border, and most of it was unfenced. And we had the most precious strategic assets on the base that you can have. If a protester had shown up standing on part of it, it would have been worse than losing a full-fledged battle and war for the United States. Well, I know what policies it takes to secure that border, which was unfenced. I know what capabilities we need to do that, and I know what the intelligence needs to be and the numbers of people we need, and that's the kind of leadership and kind of people we need in the United States Senate working for Louisiana and working for the United States of America. I thank you today. You can find more about me at robmaness.com, ROBMANESS.com. I'd appreciate your vote. I appreciate your support. And I'm the outsider, the fighter, and proven leader that's going to help get this country back on track and take Louisiana into the 21st century as what it should be. The crowning jewel of the United States in oil and gas, tourism, food, agriculture, and every other small business that the innovators can think of, because we will be unfettered from overreach and overregulation. God bless you all. God save these United States. I love you. I love God. And thank you very much.
I'm running for the United States Senate. The reason's pretty simple. I want my country back. I'm afraid we're losing it. My mom and dad were conservative people. They taught me conservative values. They taught me church, God, country, family, discipline, hard work, education. I worry that we're losing those values today. Values are important. They determine our choices, and our choices determine our future. And I think our country has been put at risk by the values and the choices of the limp, self-perpetuating political elite in Washington, D.C. And that's why I'm running for the United States Senate. The American people feel stuck because they feel like they're losing the American dream. Our kids' generation is the first in America that's at risk of being worse off than their parents. And I'm going to go try to do something about that in Washington, D.C.
What do you see as the biggest issue in the U.S. Senate that affects local government here in Louisiana?
Well, I think there are 2 issues that affect all of us. Number one, particularly in local government, but it more than government, it affects all of us in Louisiana. Number one is jobs. I want an America in Louisiana where every one of our people can get a decent job, and that's especially important for our local communities and for our state. if for no other reason to keep our kids home. If we keep losing bright young people to Denver and Dallas and Atlanta, the average age in our state's going to be deceased. Now, you can't be for jobs if you're against business. To create jobs, businesses have to have low taxes, sensible regulations, good infrastructure, and a well-trained workforce. And that's what I work hard for every day in the U.S. Senate. I think the second biggest issue that's affecting our local communities, our state and our country, is national security. I mean, I want a country that is strong. If we're strong, we'll be free. I want a country that values peace but's not afraid to fight back. Our country's the strongest country in the history of the world, and America needs to start acting like it.
My message is one of how do we rebuild American prosperity and economic growth here in Louisiana. This is critically important because people are out of jobs, wages are flat, and we need a vibrant, growing American economy, a vibrant, growing Louisiana economy, so that all of our communities prosper, wages go up, families can achieve the American dream. And that's what this is all about.
What do you see as the biggest issue in the U.S. Senate that affects local government here in Louisiana?
Well, again, it's going to come back to economic opportunity and economic growth. And our small towns are struggling right now because we've seen economic headwinds coming from the top down. I want to get the burden of undue burdensome regulations out of the way for our small businesses to grow. We need to simplify the tax code, make it fairer for families and for small businesses to grow and create opportunity. Let's unleash American genius, and that's small business. Let's make life easier for families to put bread on the table, buy clothes for their kids. I think the bottom line is we need economic growth.
My message here is that Washington is out of control. It's not sending the funds, the resources back to the states and the locales necessary for bridges, for highways, for coastline protection. And it's time that Washington begin to send that power and that authority, including taxation, down to the people where people can make those decisions best.
What do you see as the most important issue in the U.S. Senate that affects local government here in Louisiana?
Well, I would say there's a number of them, but one of the most immediate ones is the waters of the U.S., which is a redefinition of navigable waterways, which in essence makes almost the whole state of Louisiana federal territory, requiring a federal permit and even mitigation. We've got to put a stop to that. But there are many other damaging regulations, everything from Obamacare to flood insurance. All of these things need to be either fixed or stopped along the way.
I'm telling people all across the state of Louisiana that we need somebody in Washington to fight for the people of the state of Louisiana who is not controlled by big business. I have a record second to none for taking up for consumers, from taking on the payday loan companies to taking on astronomical cost for 40,000 prisoners' families when they have to use telephones, to fighting utility companies, telling them they make too much money in Louisiana, and I've been a real proponent of doing something about coastal erosion. I'm amazed to see that all the politicians, want to jump around and holler about BP, how bad it was. Well, it was bad, but it's nothing like losing our coast. Where are these guys been when we talk about losing the coast? I'll tell you where they've been. They've been in the pockets of the big oil companies and big chemical companies who write the big checks. I'm not in anybody's pocket. I have a record 40 years of serving people. I'm very proud of it. I've established a $43 million trust fund in Bossier Parish from gaming revenues for schools. $1 billion trust funds from the tobacco settlement for schools. No one has ever created $1 billion trust fund for schools. Last month, we gave out $25 million to the local schools, charter schools, Catholic schools all across the state. An example, Caddo Parish here got $1.6 million. St. Tammany got $1.3 million. St. Landry, a small parish, got $260,000, and it went on and on and on from that. So I have been for the people, and I have a record to prove it. That's what we need in Washington, somebody that's not afraid to stand up.
What is the biggest issue in the U.S. Senate that affects local government in Louisiana?
having somebody to go up there that can get along and stopping this craziness that David Vitter and Bobby Jindal has, this isolationist, all this, their theory, their way or the highway. Louisiana's a poor state. 45% of the people in Louisiana live in poverty, and they're up there philosophically against everything, trying to push their agenda rather than taking care of the people of the state of Louisiana.
I think it comes down to safety and security of the country, but also getting the resources that we need to make Louisiana strong. Our roads, our bridges, our flood protection, rebuilding our coast, and continuing to fight for good Louisiana jobs, particularly protect those industries such as agriculture and oil and gas that we're fighting for today.
What separates you from the other candidates in the race?
Well, there's probably a lot of things that separate me. Some of them are more visible than others. I'm not a career politician. I've never held elected office before, but I'm an entrepreneur, a small businesswoman, a lawyer, and I care about the state of Louisiana.